Hey, let's jump back into this 0% wood guitar number 4 I'm making right now. And this one's actually for a client, and it's being all made from Richlite, which is a micarta. Yes, it says paper, but it's not wood. And aluminum. And last video, I did a little bit of the preliminary sort of R&D for the process and cut out some dummies out of wood. And now we're going to continue and start cutting out the actual aluminum and Richlite and moving forward. And I'll show you the wood guitar and making that one too while I'm at it. For the neck, I bought this 3" by 24" by 3/4 inch thick block of 6061 aluminum, and you can see I'm using my square here, one of the little built-in holes, to just quickly mark a spot in all 4 corners where I can safely drill a hole through to screw this down to the wasteboard of my CNC router. I don't have a lot of room to spare, so I wanted to make sure to very clearly and accurately mark the center of this piece where I'm going to start my tool path. So I switched from a Sharpie to a knife, you can see here, and I'm using my center square tool to help me find the perfect center of that block. Works every time. SquareTools.com. I also covered the wasteboard of my Avid CNC with this drafting paper, which is a little better than regular paper. It's got like a kind of waxy content to it, and that will help repel the oil so it doesn't soak into my MDF. Because you can see I'm quite frequently spraying a little bit of WD-40 right onto the end mill as it cuts the aluminum to help cool and lubricate the process, and all of that sprays all over the place. Cutting aluminum on the CNC router is a messy business with the oil and metal moving about, as you're going to see as we start to do these cuts. And right now what I'm doing is I'm cutting the top of the neck. This is a 2-sided carve, and so I have to cut a hole for the pickup, and here it runs really hot because I'm basically burying the end mill to cut this truss rod slot. So on its first pass it's surrounded by metal as it goes down. You can see it's really hot, but then when it goes back to make the slot a little wider, now one side of the cutter is not surrounded by aluminum, so it's not quite as hot. And here you can see it's just doing these little passes. It doesn't quite get as hot as it did doing that channel, but this is a guide that I'm putting into the top to help me align this piece when I flip it over, and you can see there it's all ready to go, and time to start the second side. These are the mirror image of those guide holes I put into the top of that block. Let's go right into my wasteboard, and now I can use little dowels to align this properly and know that my centers are the same for both sides. The next thing to do is to do a roughing tool pass before doing the 3D carve of the neck, and this is the longest and messiest of all the cuts. This took a couple hours to do. You know, obviously I'm speeding up the film here, and I had to, you know, keep it cool and kind of keep it clean so everything would work good. But there you can see, you know, a couple hours later it looks like a guitar neck now. Of course, now we'll do the final finishing tool path, which would be the second longest and messiest operation of the thing, and that's real time. What you're seeing right now is it just goes and just takes a tiny skin of material away after that roughing tool path to finish the shape of the neck and make it look smoother. And I messed around and experimented a little bit with overstep or overlapping of these passes, because like the more you overlap, maybe the less sanding there'll be, but also the longer it'll take. And so sometimes it just makes more sense to maybe make a little bit of a wider overlap and then just sand, and it's a little bit faster. It's like if you're going to end up sanding anyways, you just start with a rough grit. And after doing all that, we're able to cut the neck out and see our finished product and clean up. Alright, this is definitely heavier than the wood neck. This wood neck has a truss rod in it, and it is 0.939 pounds, and then this one here is 1.9, so this is a full pound heavier. But the guitar is going to be so small, I don't think it'll feel terribly heavy because everything else is only going to weigh a few more pounds, but the weight will definitely be here. 2.25 with the truss versus 0.939. This was the part I was most concerned with, and it actually wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, the whole sanding process. I mean, it did take some time, and it definitely took longer than doing it with wood, but I just simply started with a 60 grit sandpaper on my orbital sander and worked my way up to about 600 grit on there. And of course, there was a little bit of hand sanding to get into some of the edges, and I did hand sand it at about 1,000 grit before taking it over to the buffing wheel and buffing it up to a mirror shine. And, it was definitely more than an hour, but it wasn't all day or anything. However, the finished product, we probably won't buff to this mirror shine because it does not only reflect light sort of awkwardly off the stage, but it'll also be prone to fingerprints. So the client and I discussed it, and we think we'll just do a satin finish afterwards. But I wanted to see if I could get it to a mirror finish, and I could. And of course, all that's going to get messed up as I glue the fingerboard on, and I'll have to do it again. Next up was cutting the main part of the body out of Richlite, but first I did a test pocket cut on a piece of scrap wood to make sure my aluminum neck would fit it good, and when I saw that it did, I was ready to go and take this 12 inch by 12 inch by 1 inch thick block of Richlite to cut the main body. I was lucky that I was able to buy this size and just fit this body in because it's so small, whereas most guitars would never fit in anything that size. That, helped keep costs down and be a little more efficient with the material. But you can see this stuff machines beautifully. No tricks. I just cut it and everything looks good to go right off the CNC router. The fingerboard is also being cut from Richlite, and the client likes a fingerboard with no inlays or markings on it. However, I did put 3 holes through the front from the front on this fingerboard that I put them in the 12th position and 5th position that I'm going to fill so they won't be visible, but that way if you can see them a little bit, at least they make sense. And those are just going to be alignment pins to help me align this to the neck. Oh yeah, those are some new stickers I had made. It's time for a change. From some of the scrap Richlite, I'm cutting some little dowel plugs to plug those holes, but I also want to make dowels that I didn't want to have to worry about the look of them, that will act as alignment pins to align my fingerboard to my aluminum as I glue it. And I'm going to use my square, the original square, one of the features that I very rarely use. And honestly, it doesn't work great, but it does work in a pinch if you need to cut dowels. There are 3 holes on the square. You can see here what I'm doing with a drill, a piece of scrap wood, and I can just run it through that hole and make little dowels. But they're not going to be perfect and pretty, which is why I cut those caps separately. Then I realized as I did this that, oh yeah, that's right, this guitar is 0% wood. I can't use wood for my dowel, so I had to dig into my Richlite scraps and try the same thing with a little bit of that, which was a little bit harder because the Richlite's much more dense, but I was able to get what I needed so I can make these 3 alignment pins from this Richlite, align my fingerboard and glue it down relatively easily, and then just fill the holes with those caps that I made earlier, and you'll never see them. So this piece of aluminum gets pretty thin here, but it's because it's aluminum, it's plenty strong to handle the string tension, even though that pickup's cut away. And then this body we also have is very thin, so there's really not a lot of meat there you can see as we put this together. However, there will be a back piece of aluminum, and so when this gets bolted together, the bolt will go through this about 0.1 inch thick piece of aluminum through this 1/4 inch thick piece of this, and then through this 1/4 inch thick piece of aluminum, and that'll all sandwich it together and make it strong enough, so I'm not concerned about that. On this wooden one, however, there's a little bit of flex there, and I think when you start getting that under string tension, it's not going to work. So I, kind of knew that would be a problem, but I was cutting these wooden parts anyways just as tests. My original plan was to put a couple of these P90 pickups that I make in here, but so what I'm going to do instead on this one is instead of wasting this material and stuff, I'm going to cut a block of wood, glue it in here, and then actually glue this neck together with this body, and I'll probably just leave the bolts there just to plug the holes, or I'll make a new back. Actually, I can do that. I can just make a new back piece that doesn't have holes in it that'll just cover all that. And so what that'll do is that'll give me the opportunity to make this nice and secure and all tight with glue and a big block of wood, but I won't be able to put that pickup in. So what I can do is I can use my surface mount $2 bill pickup here, and I'll put that there, run the wires of course, and then I cut a new, I just actually cut it by hand around, so this way I can continue to build this wooden one and not waste my time that I have into it so far. And then I'll have my P90 pickup back there, and I think that'll look pretty cool. Hey, thank you very much for watching, and if you're used to the YouTube format, right here is where someone will usually try to sell you something you're not interested in with a bunch of coupon codes or whatever, and I don't do that anymore. I just keep all my content sponsor free, so you know that what I'm doing here and saying here is what I really mean to do and say, and what I'm selling is myself and my love of this craft, not some book subscription or whatever. So anyways, the way I can do that is because of viewers like you who support me over on patreon.com/TimSway, as well as viewers like you who shop at my stores, which includes squaretools.com, where I sell the tools that I make for people that do this type of work. And some of them are tools that don't really exist anywhere else in the world. I'm really proud of squaretools.com. So you can see a lot of the specialty tools I use here are available for sale there, and you can own them. And also at, of course, newperspectivesmusic.com, where I sell a lot of the guitars that I make here. I take custom orders, and I also have things like this hat and some t-shirts, and I sell some parts and stuff there as well. That is what keeps me able to just be truly myself here and be ad-free and not under the thumb of the man. I can't control what YouTube does outside. Of course, that's their space, but this space is mine. Come on in and enjoy the edification or entertainment or whatever reason you have for being here with me, knowing that it is truly me being me, and I'm really proud of that. I used the threaded inserts and the bolts that I had set up as a clamp to glue and clamp that neck in, and then I just cut a block of wood, filled it in, and once that was all dry, I plugged those holes with some dowel, and of course you can still see all this, but it'll be obscured by other parts of the guitar when it's done, and now we have a nice strong part. You'll see I used the wood dowels that I cut earlier on the wood guitar to align my fingerboard. And on this one, I'm actually going to fill in those dots as position markers because it's the guitar I'm just sort of making for inventory, not for the client. And then you can see, because it's Richlite, I have to use epoxy. I can't use wood glue. And also on this one, obviously, it's being aluminum. And so I really wanted to get a pretty good amount of epoxy, a pretty even layer of it there. You know, make sure it was all aligned properly with those guide pins, and clamp the bejesus out of it and work quickly. And now, of course, I'm going to have to clean up all this mess later. I just use a little bit of CA glue to put those caps in, tap them in, and then sand them into the fingerboard. And you can see them if you look for them, but they're basically invisible. I used a razor blade to scrape off the excess epoxy that had cured, and also to even in the Richlite fingerboard into the aluminum. And the razor blade is steel; it will scrape aluminum as well as the Richlite material. So I was able to even scrape a little aluminum off and just make that edge nice and perfect and seamless. And then using some sandpaper, I blended it all in. Back to the wood guitar for a minute. I had a change of heart on the look of it, and I've really been into doing this burnt finish on guitars lately. And I used to do it like a flame finish where you would leave the center light, but now what I've been doing is more like an offset finish. So it looks like you kind of pulled it out of a fire. And with that, I thought it'd be fun to do this sort of crazy color orange acrylic that I had left over, and I also had to route a little bit of a hole just to make that $2 bill pick up low enough to fit. And then also I needed to route a little bit of wood away at the body, which I didn't realize until after I gotten this far, for this bridge that I'm actually not going to use. I bought another one that's going to match the hardware better, but the one I bought is going to be the same height, whereas the one for the client build sits a little bit lower, so the guitar was designed for that, of course. And while I was at it, I made myself a little arm relief. The Richlite body is going to have an aluminum back plate that's going to cover a lot of it and also work as like where the bolts go through to hold the neck on, and an aluminum pick guard. And I was going to make them myself, but then I just decided to use Send Cut Send because they're so inexpensive and easy, and I didn't have to worry about dealing with it on the CNC router. So they came out perfectly, of course, and everything is going to look great. Alright, let's see what this thing is going to weigh. So I just weighed the bridge and the pickups, and together they're about a pound. Our body is 3.3 pounds. We add our plates, and now we're up to 4.4 pounds. And then we add our neck and our fingerboard and everything. And that puts us at 7.1 pounds, plus our hardware puts us at about 8.1 pounds. So maybe 8.5 pounds max. That's not too bad. I mean, for a really small guitar, still several pounds less than my Fender, but let's just, for comparison, put this wood one on. We have to add a pound or two for everything else is going to go on. But right now we're at 3.65 pounds, plus. I figure 2 pounds for everything else. So it's like, 5.6 pounds. So yeah, it's about 40% heavier, but it's way cooler. All right, let's wrap it up there for today. We're getting pretty close. I think the next video will be the all-encompassing project showing the guitar built from maybe the beginning. Maybe we'll do like a, more like my typical build video with a bunch of music or something. I don't know. But thanks for watching and following along. For the people that are interested in this more in-depth and sort of just conversational sort of type of thing, that's what I'm doing here. All right, thanks a lot and be good. Now we can really start to see what this is going to look like on the stage. And the answer is good. Really good.